Morning, everyone. I'm going to invite my partner from Bitt on stage with me, Oliver Gale, to tell the journey of how we went around creating the world's first regulated stablecoin. Ollie?
I don't know where to even begin. It's been such a long and dynamic journey, and where we are today is not where we set out at the beginning. At the beginning, it was just a name tag. At the beginning, it was a conversation with Gabriel that he brought to me about whether or not he should sell his Bitcoin at $50.
And the very next day, Oliver went diving into the rabbit hole, and we decided in that moment we were going to start a business. And I called up this guy sometime in 2013, and I said, get to my office in an hour. I'm going to be setting up a miner. Come down there. And Ollie came down. And we started off as a mining company and a cryptocurrency capital management company. This was in early 2013. And we went on.
I mean, the possibilities, I remember sitting at Gabriel's office and we were talking about the potential of cryptocurrency as a revolutionary tool, something that can change the world, and there were so many possibilities. And we said, well, where do we want to be? And what does the Caribbean need that we can bring to the table? Should we get in mining? Should we get in asset management? Should we get into, there were research papers on applications which are still not built. Things like Lightning Network didn't exist, but it had already been conceptualized. And we looked at the infrastructure and said, no one in the Caribbean has access to Bitcoin. So we need to start at the beginning. Let's build the Caribbean's first Bitcoin and digital asset exchange.
And we did that. But when we launched the exchange, one of the main problems that we found, there's this thing called the last mile problem in remittance. It's when someone tries to send money into a region, and the last mile is when that cash gets into that person's hand on the end, and they can spend that cash. Traditionally, that last mile has an upward cost of 18%. So if you're a farmer in California, sending money back home into Jamaica or somewhere in a developing nation, then there's a frictional cost to that. We believed that Bitcoin could solve that as a peer-to-peer mechanism for value transfer. So we launched an exchange, but we soon discovered that we were faced with much bigger problems. And these problems were around, how do we get the last mile problem completed while the banks were not playing ball?
So first we built cryptocurrency wallets. We attach those to the exchange so that people can have access to Bitcoin from their wallet. And Bitcoin, as we all know, the price is volatile. And we needed to create demand and recognize the vision of Bitcoin as a currency. And that price instability was a problem. So Gabe and I came up with a solution.
We realized that the entire payment system that we know today around sovereign countries was one that was very much controlled and centralized. It wasn't open, it wasn't available to developers, entrepreneurs, financial institutions. Payments as a whole were closed. And while looking at the blockchain technology, now my background's in network security and cryptographic systems. And we were using the technology the wrong way. We were trying to use it as a value transfer system as opposed to a monetary tool. So we thought, how can we complete the last mile while having a conducive, all-open system that was sovereign and that was all-inclusive of the entire economy below it? So we conceptualized a central bank digital dollar at the level of where we can have accountability, transparency, and inclusiveness. And
we put it together, we launched it. We used the Colored Coins protocol. We created the digital Barbadian dollar. And from the very start, we looked at the long vision. This wasn't a short-term play. So one of the first things we did was we went to the regulators, the Financial Services Commission in Barbados and the Central Bank of Barbados. We got a legal opinion about Bitcoin. And then the conversation started with, well, what is Bitcoin? And so we had to go through the entire process, from education all the way then to our product. And at first we had some fierce resistance. And Gabe and I had a number of sessions with the Central Bank of Barbados, and we were told that Bitcoin would not be allowed in Barbados initially. And I told the governor, with respect, sir, Bitcoin is already being used in Barbados because you can book a hotel room with Bitcoin and that's converted to US dollars. that bolster our country's foreign exchange reserves. This system is already here, and we need to build on it. And the digital dollar that we created, well, we used existing technology and collateralized the Barbadian dollar, creating the first sort of central bank nod of approval digital dollar, made a couple of waves. We made it available in our cryptocurrency wallet, which removed the volatility issue. And
well,
what happened next, Gabe? So we created the digital dollar. We had our launch party with our seed investor, and we announced that we are building an alternative payment system. That this is a payment system for Barbados and it's a payment system for the Caribbean, and that we are going to lead a charge forward. And so that was early February 2016.
And that news announcement was used to leverage. So there's this event that happens in the Bitcoin space that's hosted by a gentleman named Bruce Fenton. It's called Satoshi Roundtable, and it's a very exclusive group, and we weren't invited to it. And I tried to message Bruce, and I said, hey, Bruce, can we get into this, into Satoshi Roundtable? And he mentioned that this is very, we don't know who you are, we don't know your work. And I used this link that was a publication on our work with Central Bank, creating a digital currency with a central bank. And I was able to get into the conference on the very last day. And that conference, I remember sitting down at a dinner table, and this lady passed by me, and we locked eyes, and I noticed she shuffled away and went over to this older guy, and she whispered something into his ear. This guy beelined directly over to me. He said, excuse me, young man, are you Gabriel Abed? I said, yes, I am. He said, oh, well, I'm a massive fan of your work. What you have done is turn back the dials of controls of central banking and provided accountability and traceability to their monetary supply. Oh, and by the way, I'm Dr. Patrick Byrne. Can I sit down and join you at a table? And that conversation ended up sparking one of the greater turning points of our organization. Because later on in the night, I met up with Patrick around 11 o'clock randomly, and we spent about 8 hours or 9 hours throughout the night talking about the concept of what is a central bank digital currency, what does it mean for an economy, what does it mean for the global money movement market, and what could it really do to empower people. And in that 8-hour session, I probably ran 20 miles back and forth between my hotel room and his, grabbing documents and grabbing different brochures to prove what we were doing was real. And at 4 a.m. in the morning, this guy calls people from the UK Foreign Office, the Barbados government, senators in Trinidad that I had used as reference points to ask them if this project was legitimate and if it was happening. 7 a.m. that morning, I call my team in Barbados and I tell them, get ready. I'm about to jump on a private jet. I'm coming home with this guy. And I think...
So Gabe calls me and he's sounding very frazzled. He says, Ollie, I'm coming home. I'm coming with the investor. Get everyone ready. Get the Prime Minister, get the Minister of Finance, get Invest Barbados, get the team ready. We're coming in. I'm about to take off. I'll see you in a couple of hours. Let's do this. And so, what am I supposed to do in that situation? I started pulling everyone in our network together, all of the Barbadian regulators and stakeholders who we'd been, trying to go through this education process and running this self-regulated exchange and cryptocurrency mobile wallet with a digital dollar in it. Gabe is flying in the air, and when he landed in Barbados, he looked exhausted and emotional. And that's when I first met Patrick. And, same sort of demeanor. Young man, I've heard a lot about you. I've heard a lot about your organization and what you're trying to do. Can you tell me about it? I want to hear about it from your side. And so on the drive to the Invest Barbados offices, Patrick and I had a discussion about the bigger picture. Yes, we're from Barbados. Yes, we're two Barbadian boys, and our names are more on the map in our own minds and hearts than they are on the map internationally. And we landed at the offices of Invest Barbados, and Patrick and the Minister of Finance and the head of the Banking Commission, this group of people was there. And he said, do you understand to to the regulators and the authorities in Barbados, do you understand how important this project is to Barbados, to the Caribbean, and to the world? This is an extinction level event. Blockchain technology changes the way that everything functions. And I need to know from you whether or not you're going to allow these young men to build this company and this project, because I'm about to make a multi-million-dollar investment, and we're going to transform Barbados, and we're going to transform everything with this company. I'm here as an investor to chaperone and to protect, because there are powers that be that do not want to see the mission that we are all here for succeed. The investment happened.
On April the 4th, we made the announcement of 2016, and we got the investment. On the Friday, April the 5th, the newspaper's front page, mega investment. It was a big deal for a Caribbean company. No fintech or technology company had ever raised a multi-million-dollar round, much less one that accounted for nearly $16 million. And it was massive news. On Monday morning, Oliver gets a call from our bank.
So I'm CFO of Bitt at that time. So, Mr. Gale, how are you doing? I'm calling to let you know that unfortunately, we have to close your bank accounts. And this has nothing to do with the investment that you got last week. I said, oh, it has nothing to do with that? Okay, thank you very much. Not very pleased with that.
And we went on to, I mean, you guys think you have challenges right now with banking. Back then in that space, I remember Oliver leaving the bank with 2 duffel bags of cash. And we had to then turn to the same said technology product that we were building and use it for our own survival. A central bank digital currency. We end up
a fintech company that doesn't have the technology of a checkbook or a bank account. And we're trying to leverage blockchain technology to revolutionize payment systems in the Caribbean. And we have a room full of cash counting machines and vaults distributed across the island. And we have this mobile money wallet that we're building. And Gabe and I sat down and said, as we have said many times before, we will not be beaten. How are we going to solve this problem? And the solution came in the form of, in the mobile money ecosystem, we looked at the merchant and decided that the merchant has all of the facilities to manage cash because they manage cash anyway. So let's make the merchant the teller. Let's make them one and the same. And let's facilitate a mobile money which is backed by cash today. And when the tides turn, we will have it backed by bank accounts and more modern payment systems.
So, Oliver, why don't you tell the crowd the importance of a central bank digital currency and why we went down that road? Because we haven't touched on that point yet, and everyone's probably wondering, why would a central bank or an economy or a country want to create a central bank digital currency?
Absolutely. So, when you create a mobile money or a stable coin, there is a custodian, and that custodian presents risk. And so we looked at the trends that would have to come and said, well, where does this finally resolve? And where it resolves is the central bank becomes once again the formal issuer of its own digital currency. And so we set ourselves in a position to solve that problem. And we've been building that solution for years.
So in essence, instead of having a private e-money system that's closed off and closed loop and no one can participate in, you now have a public e-money system that all actors in society can participate in. You can send and receive freely using a public-based utility platform issued by your chief monetary authority. And that's critical from cash accounting, cash management, cash storage, cash security, cash transportation, and of course the cost to your state and your economy from the friction created of cash. In small island developing states like those in the Caribbean, up to 70% of transactions are still cash-based. And that has massive costs to an economy.
So, to borrow from the words of Governor Timothy Antoine, we threw a conference in 2017 called Central Bank Meets Blockchain. And we invited governors of central banks and authorities from around the world to come to Barbados to hear what we have been doing and to hear of what we plan to do. And a hurricane had just ravaged the Caribbean and most of the Eastern Caribbean islands. And Governor Antoine was one of our keynote speakers, and he got on stage and he said, "This cannot continue. Our economies are struggling. We are suffering at the hands of correspondent banks. These banks have effectively sanctioned countries like Belize by removing their US dollar facilities. And the Caribbean and our islands need to take control of our destinies again, because this is an issue of sovereignty of your payment system. And this is where the central bank and distributed ledgers come back into play. Because what we are doing is empowering each nation to have a financial system that has the characteristics of blockchain technology. And in so doing, the government, central banking becomes accountable to the people using the financial system. The same principles we're here for: openness, transparency, accountability, immutability, secured by mathematics. And so we are giving power back to our independent islands in the Caribbean, and we believe this should happen across every nation globally.
And using central bank digital currencies, central banks and economies are now able to do more advanced economic agreements, such as economic direct currency swaps, multilateral clearing facilities, and a lot of economic jargon, which basically means direct trade between member nations that don't need to depend on other jurisdictions for their settlement. Meaning, traditionally, right now, for a Barbadian to pay someone in Jamaica or Trinidad or one of the other Caribbean islands, it needs to go Barbados to US dollars to that other trade nation. As opposed to right now, where central banks can use this smart, programmable digital layer to settle directly between each other, and thus creating a parallel between the cryptocurrency and Bitcoin world to that of the modern age of digital central bank currencies.
So Gabriel, we started with the name tag, a dream, determination, and passion. Where are we at now with the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank? Where are we at now with Prime Minister Mia Mottley in Barbados?
So today, fast forwarding a few years, today, as of January of 2018, we launched the complete ecosystem on the island of Barbados. The ecosystem today represents merchants and tellers and mobile wallet users using Barbadian dollars across the island to settle and receive payments. We're working with several central banks, including the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, the Barbadian Central Bank, and the Central Bank of Curaçao and St. Martin, towards building this future of digital currencies and direct settlement between member nations.
And so, just to add to that point on Barbados, Barbados created a fintech sandbox environment. We had a change of administration in the middle of last year, and Prime Minister Mia Mottley came in and said, "I'm focused on two things: stabilization and transformation. We're moving to e-government, we're moving to digital fiat currency, and we're going to create the environment to support blockchain technology and financial technology." And within that environment, we have seen really huge steps. The things that we were fighting against, these doors have been opening.
So now we're running out of time. So I'll end it by saying that if there are any entrepreneurs in the room, I can tell you that we've pivoted 100 times. Our business model has changed, and we were able to build something great. So don't stop. To the central bankers in this room, we've been doing this for 5 years. We have an amazing workshop that happens once a month, an annual central bank conference, and of course, we're always there to answer any of your questions about the future of digital cash in your economy. And we thank everyone. And one of the main things is that we stand by, it's still there on the main pillar of our building, is empower people. Thank you for your time, everyone.
Thank you.